Welcome to Grill Wars, the podcast where we take popular, iconic films and controversial topics and grill them up, chop them up, and discuss what we love and hate. I'm Mike Freedom.
I'm Duke Meadowpoint.
Duke, what are we grilling up today?
We're going to be taking a look at an old classic from 1993, Jurassic Park, directed by Steven Spielberg. It's been a long time since I've seen this one. It's definitely one I've seen probably a good dozen times in my lifetime, but it's been a while since the last one, and it was good. It was really good.
Wait, that's it? Only a dozen times? Let me ask you this: Do you remember where you were when you first saw this film?
I don't remember at all, dude. It's
definitely
been a while.
Yeah, no. So I remember my parents had seen it, I think, in the theaters, and then I saw it at my house. I was not in the theater, but I definitely saw it at my house. And my mother, being the overprotective one that she was like, this might be a little scary for you. And I was such a nerd. I was all into it.
Right.
And that was it. I just fell in love with that movie, and it's been in my top 10 easily ever since.
Yeah, I didn't realize going through it again, but thinking about the film rather than just sitting there watching it, taking it in, and like actually thinking like, what do I think about this movie? It was really well made. So I don't know if that's a little
so
Spielberg
well
magic or what, but
I think it was a combination of everything. I mean, the plot and the movie itself was based off the novel by Michael Crichton, which it always helps when you have excellent source material when you're creating something. But I mean, we can start just even with the cast, and there was a bunch of great people in there. Dr. Grant, Sam Neill, who for the longest time I was just like, the guy from Jurassic Park, the guy. Oh yeah, that guy, and you just knew who he was, right?
Right. Yeah. Definitely iconic. Makes me
Jeff
wonder.
Goldblum. Go ahead. What?
Yeah, regarding Grant, was he in the future Jurassic Parks, or was it just the first one?
No, he was in the third one too. They brought him back for the third one. But I'm not going to get into the other ones. We're talking about the original, the
OG.
Classic.
Exactly.
Yes. I haven't really seen him in much other things. I mean, I saw him in The Tudors, which was a show on HBO, he was good in that, but I didn't really see him in much else. But he was excellent in this movie. For his character, right?
It wouldn't be the same without him. I can't imagine it without him.
Totally, right? I guess it's worth mentioning Ellie, Laura Dern. I don't really see her much, but she was good in the movie too. Jeff Goldblum. I mean, probably my favorite character in the whole movie.
Probably one of the few characters people remember the most from this movie.
How can you not? He was so erratic and just, and just very Jeff Goldblum.
He was kind of borderline the comedic relief of the film, wasn't he?
100%. Like, you are going to have dinosaurs in your dinosaur tour, right? I mean, like just things like, just funny, just being
just
Jeff
off the
Goldblum.
cuff. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And then, a bunch of others. But the funny ones to me that stand out too is, Wayne Knight, Newman from Seinfeld, right, as Nedry, and then Samuel Jackson as Mr. Arnold, who's just there.
I always forget just how many movies Sam Jackson was actually in, and every time I watch Jurassic Park, I'm like, oh, that's right. Samuel Jackson.
Yeah, right. Like, oh, it's Samuel Jackson. Yeah, exactly. Like, he doesn't have a huge part in the film, but it's like, it's Samuel Jackson. Holy shit.
I think his presence in certain films definitely stand the test of time because of just how many good roles he's had in the later films that he's done too. So you come back and it's like, oh shit, it's that guy.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, he's a legend, Samuel Jackson, right?
Yeah.
So, but everybody I think did really well. Even the kid actors. I think you and I feel the same way about child acting, right? I mean, you tell me.
Generally, child acting, I think, is pretty poorly done. It's just kind of like, they're kids. What do you expect? But, watching Jurassic Park again, I was really surprised by it's like, damn, this feels so like natural. And again, I don't know if that's like the direction of Spielberg or if it's just a difference in writing that we see in today's films. But like kid acting in Jurassic Park seemed like they were actually afraid. They were actually excited. It was believable. Whereas modern films, I don't necessarily get that a lot of times.
100%. Like the fear, and even just like when when Tim gets shocked off the perimeter fence,
true.
and she's like crying, like she's upset, like you know what I mean? Like I couldn't do that shit, you know. I mean, I admire. And again, they're kids, right? So I thought they did a really really good job, and just the way that the cast was also introduced. Right, everybody had their part, including the weasel lawyer, who I love to refer him at. He's such a weasel.
Yeah,
guy.
That's his character, man. That's his
I
archetype.
know. He's such a classic weasel lawyer guy, but you know, starting with that, then they get right into what Dr. Grant and Ellie are doing when they're there. And you're right, like everybody gets a proper entry, which I also think is
Lacking
not
in
always,
modern films.
Yes, it's not always done the right way. It just this movie is such a masterpiece. Like
now, question:
it doesn't have. Yeah.
Did you read the book?
You know, I don't, because I have ADD and I don't read well.
Sure.
But
I'm
so
not
I
too
did
far
not.
off.
Yeah, I did not read the book, but I mean, yeah, no, not when I have the movie right here.
Yeah,
It's
right.
like,
True. It's like, why do I need the book? The movie's so good. Yeah.
It's so good. Yeah, it's so good.
But yeah, that's actually another point with the introduction. It was most, I think, notable with Nedry, when it's like, dude, this guy just wants to get paid. He's kind of a goofy sleazebag, but every character actually has like their moment of introduction. Grant was introduced with Ellie at the dig site, right? And Grant was kind of this hard ass archaeologist, or
hates kids.
Exactly.
I could totally empathize with him because I fucking hate kids too.
Yeah, Ellie was kind of this supporting role for Grant, but at the same time, I was surprised that there was like this girl power element to the film that I totally forgot about with Ellie.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Not only her too, but with the kid. The kid.
True.
I mean, she saves everyone's ass at the end.
She's a vegetarian on top of it.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yep. And then what is it? Malcolm Goldblum, right? His introduction was kind of in the helicopter ride and the little quips that he had.
Yep.
Hammond. I guess
Hammond was introduced with Ellie and with Dr. Grant, right?
But he
shows
has a
up.
couple of scenes where it's like, okay, well, he's like this philanthropist almost, and then
I didn't get that. I didn't get philanthropist. I got like just rich motherfucker.
Yeah, I guess that's a fair way.
Dude, like he's doing shit that like I would expect from like Elon or something. You're like, oh, I own an island and I'm creating fucking dinosaurs. Like that's some baller shit. How much money do you have to do that? I mean, think about it. You own your own islands. You can do whatever the fuck you want, and then you get all these brilliant minds to genetically engineer dinosaurs.
Yep.
That's like when Elon's like, oh, I'm gonna shoot a car into fucking space. Oh, okay. Like, how much money do you think he has to have?
When the lawyer says that you owe a penalty of $2 million, he says that's it.
Oh, does he say? I completely missed that.
He doesn't say that. He doesn't say that. That's the attitude. Yeah. He's like, oh, that's it. Okay.
Yeah, I'm telling you,
no big deal. Like he's not even worried about the lawyers in the movie.
No, he's not. And he also, I don't know if you catch this, when he goes to Ellie and Dr. Grant, they know him. Like, they recognize him. They go, oh, shit. Because they're talking shit. He's fucking everything up. And then they're like, oh, what the fuck? And he goes, oh, Dr. I'm John Hammond. They're like, John Hammond. And then he goes, oh, I'll compensate. I'll pay you for 3 years. Like, he's throwing money around like it's nothing, man. He's got fuck you money.
That's a fair point about kind of the storytelling of it as well, and how they're introducing the characters. You're being, a lot of it gets implied rather than just force fed, which I think modern movies, they introduce a character and like, she's this, she's that, she's that, he's this, he's that, he's that. Whereas this one, it's like, oh, it's implied that he's filthy rich and he's a name that's known. They'd never actually explicitly say any of that. It's all just kind of implied through their actions. And
seriously, it's crazy. Like when you turn on, and I had closed captioning on when I was rewatching this. When you turn that on too, you get little subtle things, and it's like, oh, there's a connection here, and it's perfect because you don't have to go too deep, like you said. It's just enough that you go, oh, they know who this guy is. He's a rich motherfucker, and that's it. And also that, like, even going into Nedry's introduction, right? Set up perfectly. He's somewhere, right? He's being a gluttonous, motherfucker. He's eating whatever.
A little
some
selfish.
shady, Dotson comes, and they're trying to do some shady business. And it's also funny that I laughed about. he's doing all this for $1.5 million, which I guess is today still a lot of money, but he's committing like espionage for $1.5 million, which I wonder what that would be today. I'm guessing maybe $10 million today.
Maybe. I forget if they actually said how much their characters were getting paid as the technicians, right? The computer engineers or whatever.
I don't think they ever mentioned how much they were getting paid, but we know that Nedry was like, oh, I'm not getting paid enough.
Yeah.
He mentions it in the intro, and then he mentions it later when he has a little like, fight with Hammond in the control room, and clearly there was some background. He must have fucked up, and Hammond was like, oh, fuck you, you're going to pay for this. I'm going to give you a pay cut or something.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have the disgruntled employee. Typical, very typical. The disgruntled employee that's going to fuck with everything.
Yep. And thinking back in the 90s too, and like how much a family member who had maybe a parallel type role, they're probably not making, more than 40 to 80K a year is what I would guess their salary to be. So 1.5 mil back then probably was, pretty significant.
Totally. Like, what I would do at 1.5 million today if I just stumbled upon 1.5 million? There's plenty I could do with that.
Yeah.
I'd have to invest. It's not like I could just be like, oh, whatever. But I'd have to, like, I could take that money and do something. But I think back then that was probably enough for him to maybe retire or whatever. But yeah, and it's interesting. You never know who's after the embryos. You never get that, but it doesn't matter, right? Nedry's the bad guy, and boy, does he get his later on too, which is phenomenal,
right?
Phenomenal, so good. But I think it leads, the way they did all just the dinosaurs and everything. It was so well done, and like Jurassic Park was so beyond its time. At the time, it was beyond its time because it was really one of the first movies to start using CGI, and it wasn't overdone. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It was done just well enough to where it's used in the stampede scene. It's used just to cover up like in stunts and things like that. But
it was kind of large scale scenery scenes as well.
Right, exactly, and like the intro to the brachiosaurs and stuff like that, but it's not overly done. It's not super heavy, and everything else, right, with the T-Rex and the spitters and the raptors, it looks real. Yeah, but it's like, oh.
It still holds up even today.
That's what I mean. It still holds up, but it's not overly done, so it's not like, oh, this whole thing is just CGI, right? And there's something to that where when it just looks, it just held up so well. Well.
It was really well done.
And not to mention, right, we have to call out just John Williams. How do you...
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God. I'm willing to say, too, that... Now, listen, to everybody, I'm biased, right? Okay, I'm a huge fan of musical scores, whether it's TV or film, but John Williams, the OG... This film would not be the same without John Williams or without this music. It just wouldn't.
Not. No, not at all.
It just wouldn't. Like that. The whole theme. Like you can find the whole soundtrack on Spotify. I was listening to it today in preparation for this recording because I was like, this is gonna get me in the mood, and just the whole intro to the island when they first see it and the helicopters approaching. Like it's so epic. It's just so epic. But also the in-between music, too. Like the music when Nedry's going and he's actually taking out the embryos. That's all part of the score.
Yeah.
So it's just, again, so classic, so well done.
It's another aspect outside of what we're talking about with kind of just the overall introduction and the storytelling of the characters, but even how the music plays into some of those scenes really elevates it, right? Whereas also one of those things where some more modern films, it's just like, okay, well, they went all out on the music, but was it tied to the scenes, or was it kind of forced into the scene to give it an emotion? Whereas in this one, it really feels harmonious, right? Like the reveals had a musical score that really, in a memorable way, kind of lifted the scene and made you feel like, oh wow. Or in some of the more tension, the scenes with tension, the
big
music
time
really kind of played into that. Whereas I don't know, I don't necessarily get that kind of memorable, you can think back and it's like, yeah, that was the music really played a role there, which I get a lot of people don't maybe see the music because it's invisible in that regard. But
Yeah.
it's when you pay attention to how music elevates not just films but even TV shows. Yeah, having a good score and having it tie into the scene, and I guess the director and the composer kind of working closely together really makes a big difference.
And I think, and I could be completely wrong here, but I know I've seen something like Ramin Djawadi when he did Game of Thrones, like he would watch it and compose after, I believe. And when you look at the movie, there's you have to do that because the way that the score is composed, like it's composed with the movie, like you said. So I would go out on a limb and guess that John Williams did the same thing, but I'm not one to question genius. It came out just unbelievable, and it's so epic.
I mean, the Jurassic Park theme still holds today, right?
100%. 100%. Something. I mean, not only that, right? So the music, but just the way the story was told too. And again, could be based off of Michael Crichton's novel, but just even things like the foreshadowing with the raptors. Like the raptors are such an important theme in the movie, and it bleeds over into the other films. We're not going to talk about those, but I know it does. And it starts with this film. I mean, even the opening scene with Grant. Right, and when he
talks about the raptors,
talks about the raptors when he's shitting on that little kid, and it's great.
Well, what's funny is the raptors were brought up even before that with the shoota scene. Like that was actually like in the opening, like introduction to the movie is where they're first showing like how deadly and cunning the raptors could be. Right, and then it's actually reinforced multiple times leading up to the scenes with the raptors. So yeah, like you were saying, with Grant talking about the raptors and how intelligent they can be, how they can hunt, in the scene where they're feeding the raptors, right? After they see that, oh, you're creating raptors with the little tour ride and seeing the egg hatch, right? That was a raptor.
Yep.
And then with the feeding, the hunter dude, what was his name? Muldoon. Yeah, Muldoon was talking about how they have to feed them this with dropping the food down, because if they tried to do it another way, they would start like prodding for weaknesses in the fencing.
Right.
They
remember. Yeah. Like, so they hint at the intelligence there. So you're right. Opening scene, right? How could I even forget that whole iconic like shooter, right? That. Then the scene with the kid, the feeding, and then it kind of goes full circle too when Muldoon gets killed, right? A clever girl, because like he's like, I got her. He comes right from the side, and it's like, oh, R.I.P. You're done. And it's just such a good callback. And I mean that whole scene too with the kitchen. Oh my God, that is so good, terrifying. Like, could you imagine?
The kids did a great job selling their emotions in that scene, but also, they hunt in packs. They open the door.
Yeah, they open the door.
They're peeking around corners, and like you can hear them calling and communicating with the little chirps that they do.
Yep.
Oh yeah,
dude, so good. And it's so they become like just the I mean, obviously the T-Rex is like, oh, T-Rex. But at the same time, the T-Rex has a weakness, right? You don't move, which, by the way, is complete bullshit. I looked it up. Complete bullshit.
You know what's not bullshit with the T-Rexes is the chase scene when they were getting away in the Jeep after picking up Goldblum. What my understanding is that a T-Rex, because of its large body, it has like bursts of energy, so prolonged like sprinting to try to catch prey, much like I think lions also have a similar kind of deal going on, where it's like it's in bursts, otherwise they just overheat and they become tired and they got to rest and become vulnerable.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
that's a good point, because that was an intense scene too, right? Because they find and that's another scene where the music is adding, like they find the car, right? And then Malcolm's sitting there, right? Jeff Goldblum, and he's like, oh, it's an impact tremor.
Well, it's actually less music and more like the eerie silence with the doom.
Yo, yeah. And then that's it. And then it appears, and you're like, oh shit!
Yeah. How are they gonna get away from this one?
Yeah. And yeah, you're right, because then they get lucky and they zoom away. So, but the raptors, on the other hand, they are deadly, man.
Oh yeah,
deadly, and they just get very lucky. They just get very lucky throughout the movie. Between the kitchen scene, they lock one in the fridge, and then the other two are there. And then at the end, like, they get really lucky. But overall, the raptors are the funniest part is when they're in the control room and they try and open the door, and it's just it's so good, so good. Oh man, would you believe that the movie takes place over? It's supposed to only take place, I think, over like a day and a half.
Honestly, it's not something I even thought about, but yeah, they get there. I guess they spent. Well, no, they had to spend 2 nights, right? Because when it was raining, I guess the storm could have covered up the sunlight, perhaps. But the original T-Rex scene, right? It was dark because there was a storm going on.
Yep, that's all the first night.
Yeah, they definitely spent the night up in the tree, so we know one night definitely passes.
Yep.
And then it's like broad daylight by the time the movie ends. So yeah, a day and a half sounds about right.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like they needed a crazy amount of provisions, other than, like, some help, like, because Malcolm fucks up his leg.
Yeah, true. That's what.
But
he did kind of get launched by a T-Rex into a shack.
Yeah. Into a shack, and then he fucks up his leg. He saves himself. He puts a tourniquet on or something. I saw that. I was like, oh, okay. So, he's whatever. But then he's still feeling well enough, though, to look pretty good while he's in the control room, right? When he's just posing, like, ooh, okay.
Yeah, it's a meme, So.
Yeah.
that oiled up, sweaty chest of his, and
oh yeah. And it's that, and then it's hysterical, because anytime I look at another thing I love about it, because it makes it so classic. Anytime I look at older movies and I look at the technology in it, I go, all right, what are we working with, right? So when they get into the car and she's like, oh, an interactive CD-ROM.
Oh yeah, all the little throwbacks. I guess today you'd call them throwbacks, but back then it was the technology of the time.
Yeah, are you kidding? That was fucking cool. CD-ROMs were the shit. I would go over to my buddy's house and be like, oh, we'd throw in an encyclopedia or some game and CD-ROMs, man. What the hell are those? You don't use those today. Everything is streaming now, which is what's wild.
The old monitors, the Linux operating system.
Yeah, it's a Unix system. Which is, what's odd to me, though, and then for those of you, like, Unix systems, Linux systems, they're mainly command lines. So it's interesting that whatever they're using in the movie, it has a user interface.
Well, I'm pretty sure they had a basic user interface back then too. It's just the hardcore generally like working through the command line. Sure. Yeah.
But that's everything he does, and then they, of course, they have to reset the system, which they, luckily they do. One thing, I don't know, do you recall when they're in the middle and they're trying to figure out what's going on before they reset the system? Muldoon goes, oh, what about the lysine contingency or something? And basically, it's something where they could have killed all the dinosaurs.
Was that the mechanism where they bred them so that if they don't get a certain like enzyme or something after like 7 days, they'll just pass away?
Right, they'll just die. Yeah. Right. So I'm like, well, that would have been a pretty good contingency as well. I mean, you have to survive for a little bit, but they gloss over that, really. So it's just interesting. They add it in, but then they just completely gloss over it, and they're just like, restart the system, and then obviously that happens, and R.I.P. Daniel Jackson.
Yeah, that's right. Honestly, actually, I totally didn't make the connection previously watching that the arm that appears was him.
Yeah, that's him, dude. Yeah.
It wasn't dark enough.
Yeah. Oh my
But
god.
I think one of the reasons why they also glossed over it is I think one, it wasn't meant to be like the emergency stop, because I think the emergency stop, but like the moral of the story is that life finds a way, right?
Totally,
So
yeah.
so I think even in the later films, which we won't get into too much, but I think they make a mention that they like overcame that aspect of their engineering. Much
Yeah,
like,
I mean, they're here now and they're not going anywhere apparently. So.
right. So it's like, oh, you've opened Pandora's box essentially, which is what Malcolm, Jeff Goldblum, was trying to warn them from the get-go.
Right from the beginning, chaotician, whatever, and all this other stuff he was saying, but he was 100% right. I mean, it's one of the most classic lines, the whole life finds a way thing, and they sure do. It's so funny because when you see that scene and he's like, oh yeah, amphibian DNA, oh, they just changed their sex. It's like, oh,
Right.
okay, whatever, fine. Because it's like, oh, so you're getting eggs, they're out. So, oh, not good. But
Yeah.
it's just not good.
So
But what were you gonna say?
No, so we've kind of covered, a lot of the highlights of what we noticed going through the film again. But if you had to think about Jurassic Park, what's like one or two scenes that just like immediately pops into your head when you think about Jurassic Park?
Definitely the kitchen scene. Because
Okay.
that scene is just good with the raptors, and again, even to the kids. So kudos to them. Who was it? Joseph Mazzello and Ariana Richards as the children. And let me think about the other one. Which one pops up for you?
It's funny because the part that pops up for me whenever I think of Jurassic Park is the shoe toss scene, which is such a small moment in the grand scheme of the movie, but it's the one that is stuck in the back of my brain and I can't get rid of. I love that I guess what's going on, it's like shit's gone south and he's doing what he can and he can't be the one to pull the trigger, so he's just crying for someone else to shoot the damn thing. But yeah,
dude, it sets the whole tone for the movie too.
Yeah,
like,
no, it's true. It's exactly it. It's like it kind of foreshadows. There's so much foreshadowing that goes on in older films versus today, but that scene alone also kind of foreshadows that, like, yeah, they got the raptor in the cage. They got all these people with these zappers ready to go, and it should be
shit.
Yeah, the box should fit into the hole, and the raptors are set loose, but the raptor is too intelligent, and it knocks it back, and guy gets knocked off, and just shit hits the fan, which is basically just how the whole movie plays out, scene by scene by scene. It's just like,
yes, exactly.
what they think. The moments they think they have control, they don't actually have control. And if shit can go south, it kind of does. And life finds a way.
It's interesting that you say that, because are you saying, because at one point when they're eating the ice cream and Ellie's talking to Hammond, she says exactly that. Did you say that purposely? Because she says exactly that. She goes, you didn't have control. That was the illusion.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, she did say that.
That was the whole point. So it's interesting that you. So all right. So you didn't even plan that, right?
No,
I mean,
I wasn't even thinking. I totally forgot about that.
Dude, yeah, and she almost verbatim for what you just said, which is kind of scary.
This is something I've noticed in not just old films, but even old like books. And if this, Jurassic Park based on the book, it obviously kind of makes sense. But like good writing, much like good comedy, has moments where it comes back and there's a constant, the moral that the message is constant, but the delivery is in kind of segments, and there's always areas where it loops back, right? You make that full circle again. So I think if you really pay attention, and I never took any sort of like film analysis or movie critique type courses.
Me neither.
So
yeah, no.
Who knows what they talk about, but
right,
like really trying to watch the film and not just watch it to enjoy it, but also to prepare for having a chat about it. It's like I noticed more and more that I'm like, oh, I never thought of it that way, or I never thought about this scene in this particular way, or like, oh yeah, this scene, like with the raptors, right? We've talked about like multiple instances where, again, there's like the breadcrumb, the scene, and multiple scenes kind of crawling back and circling back to these breadcrumbs that they were sprinkling all throughout not just like the first 10 minutes of the movie, like the first 30 to 40 minutes of the movie, there's breadcrumbs everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's that's what I'm saying. Like it's so masterfully done with the way, again, it's almost like, setting it up, jab, jab, and then coming in with a right cross. It's like it's the audience gets hit, and I think, and this is my opinion, movies that you can rewatch over and then appreciate things again or from a different lens or different angle, that's what makes movies timeless, because you can watch it over and over again. We can sit here and say, let's watch it and let's talk about it. I'm rewatching it again and going, man, like the appreciation is still so super high. And if you're listening to this, you probably feel the same way because, you found Jurassic Park, right, and came across our podcast. So,
yeah, let us know what you guys think as well. But just the progression of the film, superbly done, still stands the test of time. I didn't realize that, even if older movies are, a bit shorter at the 90-minute mark typically, but watching it again, like I never really sat there and felt bored. I never felt like hitting the arrow keys to skip ahead.
Nope.
Yeah. You mentioned a good point with the characters about like how Grant didn't like kids. And this is something else that also I think is lacking from modern film. It's like true character development. I think the closest that I feel is worthy of mention might maybe like Tony Stark from Iron Man, but that was across like 3 films. Whereas Jurassic Park with Grant, like he didn't like kids at the beginning. At the end, he's all cozied up with them in the closing shot.
Yep.
It's not just Grant, but even Ellie. Like she had to take action, and she actually went out into danger, like putting herself in danger, which she didn't really do at the beginning, because I think she had more of a what was her
she was a paleontologist.
Yeah,
she
exactly.
wasn't really she wasn't into dinosaur. I mean, but she's into fossils and that sort of thing.
And also the kids, right? Like Tim was more of a kind of a nerdy little kid, but he actually had to, I guess, I don't know if man up is the word, but I think there's a moral a little bit with the way the kids behaved. Lex was a little bit more obvious because she, one, hated dinosaurs, like she was terrified. I guess she had a little bit like an abandonment thing because the lawyer left her. And she's
my God,
he left us. Yeah.
She was so traumatized. I mean, I get it, right? But he left us. So much trauma. Gonna need years of therapy from that. Just that alone.
Right.
Not to
Well,
mention
Grant helped out a little bit in there.
Yeah.
But it was also funny how she, at the beginning, with Ellie's little nudge, again, a lot of it kind of implied, or a lot of the storytelling, just like one little line, one little voice line is all it took for you to like grasp the situation, where she went up and like said, I was going to sit with you because Ellie said it was going to be good for him. Right?
Yeah. She was trying to set him up.
Or the other scene where she, I think, tripped, and Grant went to go pick her up, and she just like won't let go of his hand.
Yeah,
she's
you saw
smiling.
that, right?
Yeah. So I don't know if the trip was intentional. I have to go back and maybe check that out. But
no, I don't think the trip was intentional. But you had Tim like, hey, look at this, and then she's not letting go of his hand, and like, so again, you see how it brings up the point where it starts, hates kids, still hates kids, and then he's got to, he takes action, both him and credit to Malcolm, when the fucking T-Rex is about to, they're like, they don't even hesitate. They're like, all right, let's go out. And they're throwing flares, whatever. And then Malcolm is running away. And then again, he gets yeeted over to the shack from the T-Rex. But after that, man, Grant just steps up and he's taking care of him the whole rest of the film.
More evidence of just storytelling through action, right? It's like you can understand and you feel and you can build your own opinion about a character based on, oh, did he leave the kids behind in a time of dire, when the adult should have helped keep them calm, or did they put themselves in danger in order to do something that you would, I think, objectively look at as good, right?
Yeah.
Whereas in modern films, it's a lot of times it's like, well, you got to do this thing. They're like pre-planning it while the movie is going on. It's like, hey, okay, your job is to do this, this, and this. And generally, the character in some form or another just plays it out the way it was spelled out. So it's like you're kind of doubling up on what's going on, what the audience is kind of taking in. It's like, okay, well, he's going to do this. Does he deviate from that? No. Right. Whereas in this movie, they don't have to do any of that kind of foundational prep work. You kind of start to build your understanding of the character as the film goes on, and their actions, I think, really speak louder than words, which,
it's an interesting point because so you got Spielberg who directed it,
yeah.
and who wrote it?
Who wrote the film? The script?
Film, because so that's something we didn't look up. I'm gonna look it up on the fly. So
I could tell you the writer is Michael Crichton.
Michael Crichton. It's the same guy.
Crichton, and then David Coep.
David Coep. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I mean, yeah. So you have Michael Crichton doing the same. I mean, he's making a movie from his own book, right? I mean, it's the analogous to that is having George R.R. Martin, in Game of Thrones while he's producing it, right, where the books are still the source material. So it'll be interesting as we continue to watch some movies, right? We continue to do this. That this is an example, excellently done, right? We had nothing but good things to say about it. We love it, right? Cult classic, has a good source material, right? And you guys can let us know what some of the movies you want us to talk about. We have a couple on deck that we're thinking about as well. Is it going to have source material or not? And what's going to make it good? And we'll see, because that may become a theme that we uncover with each show.
That is true. Yeah. Having that really solid written down to make real, right? Versus something that was kind of formulated for the purpose of a film. Yeah, the source material I think is going to be an important factor, but the way the story is told is also, it lies on the director. And I know Spielberg has a good history, right? He's well known as a director for good reason. So yeah, much like just general how you tell a story, whether it be comedy or film or even music. Like music is just storytelling with sounds, right? So
correct.
Yeah, we'll see what we come up with next, what we cook up next time. But
see you at the next grill. So with that, we'll wrap this up. If you enjoyed this show, like, subscribe, follow us, all of that. We're going to be continuing to do this, chopping it up, grilling it up. This is Grill Wars. I'm Mike Freedom.
Duke Meadowpoint.
See you guys next time.
Peace.